One of the best definitions of business I ever heard, so this has stayed with me, said that the purpose of a business is to serve.
Mm.
So to me, to me the leading question is not can I make money on this? It's how can I serve? The money is always going to be there. If you find a way to genuinely serve someone, you're going to monetize that, right? So
Hey guys, welcome to the Levelin Up podcast with Brigham Blackham. So grateful to have my good friend Von Ray. He is the owner of TPRS Books. He is a prolific writer. Honestly, I've read multiple books that he's written with graded readers. So phenomenal in the Spanish language as a teacher. He's a master teacher when it comes to this specific strategy, teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. What's cool is this has come full circle for me because when I first started teaching, I was like so bored trying to go through textbooks. And I was like, I need another way to do this, or I'm not going to make it through my career. And when I found the TPRS method, I was like, oh, this is finally fun again. And I'm really grateful for you for that. It changed the way that my 7 year career teaching went, and I had fun every single day because of that method. So thank you for your dad for creating that, and you for creating a platform and an experience to have everybody that wants to learn a language uh, as a student and as a teacher, being able to use a method that works and is efficient and is fun. Man, so much fun. So Vaughn, welcome to the podcast. So
thank
grateful
you.
to have you.
Thrilled to be here with you, Brigham. Yeah, nice to love seeing what you're doing. It's so fun to be a guest.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we're working on some fun things right now, and I would love to hear a little bit more of your background because I mean, I know you from this space, but you're also a great business owner. So tell us a little bit about your journey in business and how you came to this point where you're like, now I'm the owner of TPRS Books, got this great company. Tell us a little bit of that journey.
Yeah, so it all for me, the passion all started with teaching, and yeah, I decided in college to be a Spanish teacher, so I started teaching Spanish, and yeah, my dad invented this really cool way of teaching, which I didn't get to experience as a student. I have three sisters. They all had my dad as a teacher. I didn't, so I did 600 hours of learning about Spanish, really, and I couldn't speak at all. Lived in Chile for a couple of years, so that was hard in the beginning.
Mhm.
But yeah, teaching with stories is just it's the way to teach language. It's fun. There's energy. That it's we all love stories. Our brains gravitate towards stories. So once I saw what my dad was doing professional, I was like, oh, I want to be a part of this. So I joined him full time in my early 20s and have been with him ever since. I he sold me the company a few years ago, and yeah, so that was a whole new endeavor, right? Okay, I'd been a part of TPRS Books as an employee, and my dad gave me a lot of room to fail, which means a lot of room to grow, and I found myself really enjoying the challenge of trying to build a business. I never had any intention of being a business owner, right? I was planned on being a teacher because I love teaching. But hey, no, a business is an opportunity to help people, right? And I like that challenge. So I do really enjoy being a business owner, all the ups and downs and the challenges of that.
Absolutely.
Uh, it's been a fun ride, a fun journey, and we're hopefully just getting started on this journey is what I hope
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
bigger and better.
And guys, our topic today, we're going to be talking about three secrets to turn passion into profits. And one of the things I'm so grateful to have Vaughn on for today is he's been able to turn a passion of language learning into something that can create success in building fluency fast. And there's so many people that I've spoken to over the years that they've gone through a Spanish program or a high school French program or a Chinese program or something, and they never got to speak. They learned a lot about the language. They have an appreciation for the language and how difficult those systems are, but they didn't live in the language and they didn't play in the language and have fun while they were doing it. And the thing is, if it never has that connection to actually live in the language and play in it and to experience it, you're always looking on the outside. And that's how I felt a lot of my language classes were until I found this method of being able to to tell stories and to live in the stories. So let's talk about this first secret. In your opinion, what is the first way that you were able to take a passion for learning and language learning and turn it into something that was profitable?
Yeah, right. It's gotta ultimately a business is trying to solve a problem, right? So what is the problem? TPRS Books, my company, what problem do we solve? Yeah, what's the fastest way to fluency? So specifically, I mean, yeah, one thing we do is my dad and I we teach Spanish classes, right? We're teaching Spanish classes right now. And why are these people taking the class? Because there's a specific result they want. It's a big deal to become an intermediate fluent speaker. What does that mean? That means like if I were to travel to I'll just use Spanish speaking country, that I could, if I were in control of the conversation, meaning I'm asking the questions, right? Then I can have a conversation. It's more than survive. I can thrive. I'm very comfortable. I'm painting a picture of what this intermediate fluency looks like. And yeah, traditional methods don't do a very good job at getting learners to intermediate fluency. In fact, there's the largest organization in my field is an organization called ACTFL. They say it takes 4 years of school just to get to this intermediate, the very lowest level of intermediate. 4 years of, well, that's we're talking hundreds of hours, right? Several hundred
180-ish
hours.
hours, something like that.
Yeah.
It's
Our
nuts.
best our best students are getting there in 30 hours. 80% of our learners are getting there in a 60 to 80 hour class. So very, yeah. And what's the challenge of learning to speak a language? Is can you string sentences together?
Mhm.
So I like it when you said playing the language, right? So what do we do? We get people first understanding the language with a massive amount of repetition. It's all a story, right? So your brain is playing in the language. The whole thing's play. We're not explaining. We explain very little about the language. The rules don't help you speak a language very much. So yeah, it's all play. You're playing the language, but your brain needs massive repetition. So the science is you need to hear the language so many times, depending on the word of the phrase, so that it's stuck in your head, and then you speak it spontaneously. Is what happens throughout this process.
And you create iterations with variations.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. When you
Yeah.
hear something multiple times, but you hear slight variations,
Yeah.
you start to create deeper connections with the language.
Yes.
So helpful. And that's one of the things I love about stories, because you can hear a story once from one person's perspective and you got the story, then you hear it from another character's perspective and you heard the same story, but now it's all slightly different.
Yeah.
So how did you discover that this was the method for you to say, this works? This is just flat out, this is the thing to do.
Love it. Failure is a great teacher, right? So again, my 600 hours, I took 2 years of high school. Oh, okay. So here's a specific story. Again, I did 600 hours of learning. I say learning about Spanish because there's a difference between learning about a language and learning how to speak a language. Well, I did 600 hours of learning about Spanish, but I couldn't speak it. So a very specific example is when I was a young man. I was 19 years old. I was going to live in Chile. I was doing missionary work for my church. So I had a very specific purpose. All I wanted to do was to be able to communicate with people
Yeah.
in Chile, real people, right? And before I went to Chile, again, 600 hours, I spoke very broken, slow Spanish. I wasn't intermediate, anything, even close to intermediate. Well, my younger sister, she had had my dad as a teacher, so she was doing storytelling, and she'd had half the time as me, and she spoke circles around me this day in the airport. And I still remember this, and I remember just thinking, my goodness, they're my little sister. She has the gift. We call it the gift of fluency, right? She had the gift of fluency that I was envious of, and that I needed to thrive for the next 2 years of my life. So how did we discover this? Again, my dad discovered it, and I eagerly wanted to be a part of it once I became a teacher, and then I've seen result after result after result of people can talk. So yeah, once you see the results, it's something I've wanted to be a part of my whole life because I love teaching language as a means of connecting with people. To me, that's part of my why. So this is a perfect vehicle. But in the end, it's solving a practical problem, the need to speak a foreign language.
Absolutely. Solving a practical problem and then having fun while you're doing it. Like
Yeah.
that's part of it. And why this works so well for me and why it's worked so well for so many is because you're playing in the language and you're experiencing it rather than hypothetically thinking about, oh, if you were in this situation, could you use it? You're like, okay, sure. Yeah, you could. Why don't we just use it now? Like it
Absolutely.
takes the learner out of the hypothetical and into the reality. You just
Yeah.
use language to play in the language and to connect. So, what if you could boil it down to the second secret? What would be the next way that you took your concept of like, hey, here's my passion, here's what I want, and then you've created profits in that way?
Yeah. Gosh, we've built an entire company around it, right? So we train teachers how to teach, which is our primary market. We've written a whole bunch of books, right? So that serves people in learning to speak a language. It's really good to read, and when you're in the beginning stages of reading, you need readers that are highly comprehensible. So my team, we have over 100 highly comprehensible readers in various languages. Uh, so it's just continuing to solve problems. What do people or teachers who want to teach languages or speak languages, what do they need in that journey? That's what we've done. I'll share one more interesting thing about learning to speak a language since we've
Yeah.
been talking about that. What's interesting is the top 50 words in real Spanish or English, the top 50 words are 60% of the language, I mean, of the spoken language. So you only have to know 50 words. And when we say know 50 words, right, I'm not talking about isolated vocabulary. Can you string those together in sentences just like you and I are doing now? But the reality is we use a lot of the same words over and over again in our everyday speech. We're not even aware of it, but studies have shown this. There's one study that showed a group of teenagers, they used, oh, it was 200 some odd different words in their everyday speech. Some of those teenagers don't have much to say, right? I mean, they don't use a lot of words. So one of these potential myths out there is, oh, you got to know so many words to be able to communicate. You really don't. You've got to know a narrow amount of words, and then you have to be able to put those in sentences, and you can thrive in this language. So that's part of what we're doing as well. How do we serve people? Understanding the science and what do people really need. So we teach a very narrow amount of words and sentences so people can talk.
And guys, you may have heard this as the 80-20 rule, Pareto's principle. It comes down to, are you putting the highest amount of energy and effort on the things that matter the most? You can use that in business in multiple facets, but you guys really implement it well in TPRS. I freaking love it.
I
So,
can't hear you anymore.
oh, you can't hear me anymore? Oh, I can hear you all right. Did you get disconnected? Can you still hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, sorry. Looked like you're doing all right. Okay. So let's back up just for a second. So you said if you really narrow it down, you got this 80-20 principle, you understand 50 to 100 words that are the highest frequency words. That's around 60% of the language. You can communicate in lots of basic ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's really encouraging for people because they don't have to know 2,000 or 3,000 words to be
Yeah.
able to have a basic conversation.
Yeah.
That's freedom in a lot of ways. So when you discover something like that and you're excited about it and you make it fun, it's hard not to want to engage with you. So tell me about maybe your customers, how you've experienced taking this idea. You're like, hey, I've got this great idea. I've got these great readers, or I've got all these great products. And you said, now let's turn this into profit. What's that last secret for you to take that passion and turn it into a product that creates profit?
Yeah, communicating with an audience, right? So I've spent pre-COVID, I was on the road. I mean, not a crazy number, but 70 days out of the year, I was on the road presenting primarily to teachers and my team as well. So you do that year after year. If you have a message that resonates with people that solves an actual problem, and you have, right, in any business to grow, you have to have products and services that people will spend money on. So that's something we've done over, I mean, 20 plus years, right? So it's just one thing after another. Uh, yeah, more recently we've just started teaching these language classes on. So that's something that's more recent. And so that's been fun to see how people respond to those classes. They're so happy that they can talk. And we
Yeah.
actually just finished our class last week, an 80-hour class. It went from September to May. These people are on fire. And what was cool, Brigham, was I asked them last week, I said, as we're wrapping up the class, I asked them I said, raise your hand if you've used your Spanish in the real world. 100% of the hands went up, and
Wow.
people were smiling and beaming, and that's why I feel so much joy that, gosh, it's not just about, they're getting ready to take this formal assessment to prove how good they are. And that's not really the goal. I mean, the goal is to use the Spanish in their everyday life, which is what they're doing. The test just validates their ability to speak, right? But it's not about a test. It's, hey, give them this gift of language. So yeah, that's something. I mean, that's a product. A language class is a product, right? The people, what can you monetize in your business? For us, it's language classes, it's teacher training. People will pay for that, and then they'll pay for books and curriculum. That is what we've built our business around. So any business owner, right? Yeah, starts with an idea. Eventually, you have to say, what can I monetize? What will people pay for a given product or service? And that's going to vary from business to business, right?
Right. Well, you think about it, there are commonalities in every business.
Yeah.
And if you can help someone solve a problem that's valuable enough that they don't have to do it themselves, they're like, oh, that's a solution maybe in short term. I was like, this is a solution to clean more effectively and to make sure that my cleaners know how to do this. You write a short little book about it, and then you could monetize that book, have them pay 10 or 12 bucks for the book, and then that gives you some recurring revenue every single time someone opts into to purchase that. So as a producer of books, I think this is something that's fascinating. You don't just do one or two books a year, right? You're making like tons of different books. You're creating these readers so that you have multiple iterations and repetitions of these basic words in a context of a story. So could you maybe give us an example of why that's so important to have different types of stories? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I've got some right here. I've Part of my job, I have to go through some of these glossaries. Yeah, so a variety of stories is really fun, right? So this one's about some guinea pigs that are in trouble, right? Problemas en Shanquila. I mean, we got all sorts of readers. Daniel, the detective, right? And some of our easiest readers, which is again going back to some of the science of my business, some of the easiest readers have 100 different words. We call them unique words. 100 unique words or less. It's really hard to write a compelling story that only you could only use 100 different words. I'm talking total words. Go write a compelling story. That's really hard to do. So with our easiest readers, we've done that.
Mhm.
You know, Secrets of the Alhambra, right? You got a book about Spain, and then we have some. I'm looking at my books. There's others.
Yeah.
Variety of stories. You don't want the same type of story. Different readers want different stories. So that's one example of
And let me add something really quick
yeah.
because this is key, guys. If you're going to be learning a language or if you're doing anything with social media content, because you could think of these stories as you creating social media content. Um, every single time you hear a story that's compelling and it solves a problem, it's interesting, suddenly you create more trust with that company, you create more value, and you create more excitement around what they're doing. And you start to, if we could use Mark Kohler's word, drink the Kool-Aid, right? You start to experience like, oh, I like this. Every time a new book comes out, or every time something new comes out, you're like, oh, I want to experience that. It's not just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
And that's something I think is really unique about these stories is,
Mhm.
yeah, it's using 100 or 200 words, like a small, very
Narrow.
niche amount of words, but you're hearing it in different contexts now because it's interesting. Your brain isn't thinking, oh, what is it that I'm learning? It's, oh, what's the next part of the story? And I think psychologically we're tricking ourselves to let us absorb the language and get used to it. Because for me, my favorite thing to say about fluency in language is, you know what? I'm getting used to it. It's not I'm learning the language, it's I'm getting used to the language, getting used to how people articulate this form of this conjugation. I'm getting used to all these different elements of the language. And then as you're more comfortable, you get used to it, how people speak, then suddenly you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that I could say that. So if you could say one idea, Vaughn, that you're like, this has been the most helpful in your business journey, what would that be?
I think just a general principle I love is embracing failure. How we define failure. I've studied it. Of course, I've studied, read about growth mindset, a fixed mindset. That growth mindset is characterized by someone who's open and embraces failure, and really just you just keep going, and it's positive learning. To fail is to learn, right?
Yeah.
And that fixed mindset, it interprets failure differently. The fixed mindset interprets failure as a negative, and therefore they take fewer risks.
Mm.
And boy, when I read stuff like that, I'm like, oh, well, what's my mindset like? I want to be more of that growth mindset.
Yeah.
So how we interpret failure is really, business life. That's so important. So I've strived to, because I fail all the time, right? And I ask my kids, what did you do to fail today? And there's a positive connotation there. And there's no negativity in failure. Failure is learning. And I think I probably used to have more of to a degree, that a fixed mindset where failure was a bad thing. So I've rewired my brain on how I interpret failure, and it's paid huge dividends in my life.
Here's a concrete example of that, guys. In my language classroom, I used to use this strategy when I was reading a book to make it have a different variation. I would sometimes intentionally change a word or mistake a word, right? Say something slightly wrong, and then I'd say, hey, if you guys hear anything that doesn't sound quite right, like shoot your hand up and let me know like what you're doing. And you intentionally read something wrong that they're reading along with you, and they're like, whoa, wait a second, wait, this is how you say that. You're like, oh, it's not a chicken. That was going to the store. Okay, cool, cool, cool. And you intentionally make those mistakes. And because you made the mistake, they're like, oh, I actually know something. And you're forcing that engagement because when people feel confident, they're like, oh, I got this. I'm competent in this. That engagement, that's part of the learning process. And in social media as well, like if you aren't engaged, if you're not able to connect with someone on multiple facets, they're not going to want to interact with any of your products or services. It's about that engagement. And that's something I love about this method. Like anytime I'm teaching my kids, I like to circle. This is one of the strategies we talk about.
Mhm.
You ask about it, about a situation from multiple points of view. And it keeps it fun and exciting. So I'm curious, Vaughn, if you're able uh to take it back and look at yourself, you know, in your 20s when you first got started here, what was some advice or encouragement that you would give yourself back then? That you'd say, hey, if you would have just done this, man, things would have been so much easier.
Gosh, let's see. If you would have, uh, it's funny. You don't know what you didn't know, right? And we
Right.
learn. Uh, yeah, no, I would encourage myself to, have greater self-awareness. That's one thing I've read. I love to read books, and so one thing I've read in books says, so there's the one common trait among the most successful business owners. So whenever I hear something like that, I'm like, oh, what is it? And they just said they're self-aware. Business owners are self-aware. So I think I would have told the younger version of myself, I would have told my younger version just that, hey, to be successful in life, you have to increase your self-awareness, and look for ways to gain self-awareness. A lot of ways we gain additional awareness is what John Maxwell, I'm a
Love him.
big
He's
John
awesome.
Maxwell fan. He talks about blind spots, and he says we can't see our blind spots, which is why we need a trusted inner circle, whether that's family or friends or coworkers, to help point out our blind spots. And then from that, we can grow. So yeah, to me, that'd be the number one thing is those blind spots, oftentimes uncomfortable, right? The things that we're often just issues we have, that things we need to improve. But from there, there's growth. So yeah, I would tell that 20-year-old, hey Vaughn, seek self-awareness, and not just seek it, but embrace it, because it's for your good, even though there's always discomfort with growth and additional self-awareness, these blind spots, but it makes us into a better version of ourselves
I love it.
in the long
When I
run.
hear blind spots, I think of this word scotoma. It's a mental blind spot. So many of us have them. They have these blinders. We have these things that we thought that we understood, like, oh, I'm there. I got this. And then it takes someone on the outside, a coach, a mentor. Maybe you have to go through a program before you realize, oh, I didn't even know that I didn't know that. The things we don't know can hurt us so much.
Yeah.
And that's where danger is in business a lot of times, because we didn't realize that we didn't know that. So what are some of the ways you've been able to find the right mentors, to find the right practitioners, to say, what am I missing? Or what are those ways that I can get to that next level, to identify
Yeah,
those?
gosh, that's a great question. I seek learning in an inner circle. I mean, my wife, my wife just generously points out my blind spots, plenty which I
Mine
have.
too. She's so generous. I love it. That's
You know, it's finding a voice that you trust, right? And that some voices I trust, I don't know them. Again, a John Maxwell who's written 100 books. Gosh, I read his books, and then, but yeah, having people, uh, and when we say trust, right? I mean, it's vulnerable. It's, hey, what are my blind spots? But so there has to be an element of trust there, where hey, this is to serve a greater good. And because I've had some relationships where there's no trust there, because they really don't have the better interest of me at heart. They're wanting to attack me. I've had those relationships, so they're not in my inner circle, but it's, yeah, receiving feedback through influential voices. Bruno Bouchard, I listen to his podcast regularly. Gives me a lot of additional self-awareness. Like when I read a book or listen to a podcast, this is my approach. And some of this gives me additional self-awareness. There's three things I'm looking for. First thing I'm looking for is validation. What am I doing well, right? And we all want to know, get a little pat on the back. I'm doing this well. So yeah,
I'm
that
getting
that
there.
feels good. And there's validation in books and podcasts and other voices. So I first look for the validation. Second thing I look for are the blind spots. What are those blind spots? It's often and that comes from someone else, right? I can't see the blind spots, so I'll read them in books. I'll get them from my friends, my family, podcasts, other people, and then I have to be willing to do something to improve. So the third thing I strive to do is, hey, what action am I going to take? And rather than take 20 action steps, right? Just work on one thing. If we're constantly working on what can I do to grow today? What's a blind spot? What am I going to do today to get better? To me, that's a recipe for success, for a
Yeah,
better version of me tomorrow than I am today.
I love that. Very simple as well, because you can do that with any conference you go to, any podcast, any book, and then you're not so scared to take those action steps. Like, oh, you get that overwhelm. Like I know early on in my personal development career in high school, I was very interested with leadership,
Yeah.
going, and I just remember getting overwhelmed. You'd read a book, and you're like, I got these 25 action steps, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know what to do now. And then you don't do anything, and you don't get the progress. You read
No,
the book, but you didn't get the value.
no.
it's it's so different if you're like, you know what, of all these things, this is the one that I want to work on, and you make that choice, and you're like, I'm going to do this only until I get some value out of it. And then you have an experience, and you do this little teaching strategy: think, do, review. I mean, you've heard it over and over. As teachers, you hear this from administrators, you hear it from all these different people, but it's literally that simple. When you're learning, you think about it, you're like, hey, how does this apply to me? You do the thing, and then you review, how did it go? And then you actually have a new level of thought.
No,
You have a new level of experience. Same thing with TPRS, same thing with learning any language.
no.
You go into it saying, well, what did I think this was going to be? Maybe it didn't quite go the way you thought. You're like, well, now I have this new experience. I did that thing. Now let's review and see how we could get to that next level. And every failure is just a faithful attempt in learning. I love that, to fail. It's faithful
Mhm.
attempt in learning. So, Vaughn, what was a question that I didn't ask you that you wish that I had?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, let's see. Most meaningful failure is a good question. Balancing professional life with and relationships
Ooh,
is
okay.
is a great question. Where do you find the most joy in life? There's three questions that I love.
Okay, answer them in order then. Okay, go ahead.
Let's
Your
see.
favorite failure.
Biggest failure. Let's see. Biggest failure simply means the biggest opportunity for growth, right? So I was living in Utah when I bought the business from my dad, and our business was declining. It was declining a little bit. It was just my dad and I knew it was, right. Okay, what do you do? So through a process of gaining additional self-awareness, talking to my wife, and I'm a person of faith. Hey, I was talking to God. What do I do here? I was led to partner with this individual, and my family moved to Arizona. We're like, okay, we're gonna go start something new with this guy, and it went really good in the beginning with this partner, and then it went really bad. The more I got to know him, I'm like, hey, I this is not someone I want to be with long term, and he ended up suing me. I'm talking multiple year journey. He sued me, ton of money, ton of time. I mean, this was a multi-year process. I'm glad it's over. That ended a while ago. And so I look back and I mean, I have zero regrets. I Are there things I could have done better? Of course. I learned a ton from that, right? So failure is good as long as you learn from it, right? If we fail and don't learn from it,
Oh,
then there's no new learning. So, but yeah, I can honestly say, hey, I failed in some aspects there. I learned from it. I grew, and things I do differently today as a result. Uh, what was my say? Oh,
let's check
balancing,
with
yeah,
balance. Let's
perfection.
talk about this balance.
Yeah,
What are you
because
doing
because
with,
it's so
working and finding that work life
yeah. I
balance?
mean, we all have to decide. I mean, what's important to us in life, right? I mean, my wife and our three kids. My kids are getting older now, so I'm different stage of life now, right? So my daughter's 20, and my other daughter's 17 and 15. So gosh, life is like, hey, where'd all this time go, right? Which is cliche, but geez, I mean, I value relationships because I mean, family relationships is most important thing in life to me. My relationship with God, my relationship with my family. To me, that's more important than business. So if it's more important than business, that has to manifest itself somehow in my life, right? And I strive to find that balance of connecting with my kids, with my wife, building that relationship, spending time with them, creating meaningful life. What does that mean for us? Hey, we like to travel, we like to play games, we like to laugh, we like to talk. That's creating this connective life, right? And because I've had seasons in my life where the priority of work becomes too important, right? And I'll spend more time working, and I'll neglect those relationships, and finding that balance is an art.
Yeah.
And then it's a science as well. Right? Hey, how much time are you actually spending with those that you love? That's science. And my answer is not zero. It better not be zero, because I value those relationships.
Yeah, it really comes down to those priorities, right? What
It's a
what do you
priority.
choose to prioritize in the moment?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're like, this is the priority. And I had my friend Greg say, if you can say you're not a priority right now, whatever that is, whether it's your business or your spirituality, if you can say that after you said no, I can't be there, then you know that you chose the right priority. But that's really hard to tell your wife if you're like, hey, you're not the priority right now. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's You need to really weigh your words, and
Yep.
you can
Yep.
choose the priority. Like, hey, you are the priority at this time. Like, excellent.
Yeah.
It's not that you're not a priority. It's like, this is what I'm going to be focused on right now. And being very conscientious of how we choose to invest our time, I think is really valuable. What was
Mhm.
that last question again?
Oh, what brings me joy? I love
Yeah,
that
tell us
question.
about what makes you
What
happy. What you're most passionate about.
brings
What,
us
what
joy, right? Brendan
yeah.
Burchard talks about feeling the day, right? What helps me feel the day? Um, Professionally, certainly my biggest passion is teaching. Just a couple examples here. When I first graduated from college, I taught at a middle school in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was just my very first year of teaching, I was learning TPRS, right? I didn't know how to do it. And it wasn't very developed back then. So I mean, I failed at it all the time. But my number one goal that first year, I said, I just want to go laugh. I want to go laugh with these junior high kids, connect with them. I laughed for a year, and I got a lot better on the science, how to teach with TPRS the following year, and I had better results. But I've had a few chances to go back to that campus where I first taught. Right, that first job is always meaningful. And oh my gosh, Brigham, whenever I step foot on that campus, all this emotion comes flooding back in, and what's the emotion? It's the laughter, it's the connection. I can remember so many specific stories, faces of kids, and I'm just like, geez, that's joy. That's I could get emotional thinking about this. That is just and so much joy. And I feel the same thing now. I'm reflecting on this class that just ended now because it's a year's journey with these people and watch them go from not being able to say anything to these guys are intermediate speakers. There's so much joy there, joy in this journey of connecting with people, of laughter, of watching them progress and achieving something that's meaningful to them. And it's meaningful to me too, because I get to observe this tremendously fast growth. Yeah, so teaching's always it's been my number one passion. I love the art, the science of teaching, and one way to know what brings us joy and what our passions are, the energy level goes up, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm done teaching, I have quite a bit more energy than when the class started. It feeds my soul, that teacher soul gives me energy. There's plenty of things in my job that I do that don't give me this big burst of energy, right? Going through these glossaries, but hey, but we don't always do. Not everything's going to feed us in our in our journeys, but yeah. So
And I guess part of it is you do the things that fill your cup so that when you have to go and do something else, like read through glossaries or, reply with emails, you're like, all right, this is definitely going to be draining my cup. I need to make sure that it doesn't get to nothing. It doesn't go to zero. You need to go
yes,
teach again. You need to go add value to someone, connect with them.
right.
So, I'm curious when you have a brand new opportunity, a brand new thing in your business, what are you looking at to say, you know what, this is worth the time, energy, and effort to make sure that we do this right, or this is not quite worth it yet, but maybe in the future. How do you make those big business decisions in your exact business for a
I,
new
lo- I
company?
love I love leading with the question, how can we serve, right? Because I one of the best definitions of business I ever heard, so this has stayed with me, said that the purpose of a business is to serve.
Mm,
So to me, to me the leading question is not can I make money on this? It's how can I serve? The money is always going to be there. If you find a way to genuinely serve someone, you're going to monetize that, right? So one example, I got a call this morning that we have a team member. She lives in Florida. She's at a conference. We haven't done very well it's called the ESL. English is a second language. We haven't done very well in this market. Actually, we've done very poor. So she's at an ESL conference, and we're really there to learn. She's exhibiting, but we're really learning how can we serve. She called me. She's like, "There's this group of refugees. They want to learn English," and she said, "Can we do a class this summer?" And I didn't ask her the question's not, oh, how much money? I don't even care how much money. Can we serve? There's people that need to learn English. No hesitation. I said, the answer is yes. The answer is always yes, right? Lead with that yes. The monetization of a business will always take care of itself if the intent and heartfelt desire is to serve. Because we know what it feels like with companies when if they're there to serve us, oh my gosh. In their words, how they interact with you, they care about you. There's genuine love there. Like I felt that from a lot of companies. And then we felt the opposite. If it's just about the dollar, right? And it has a different feeling. And so lead. lead with service has been one of my mantras in business.
Lead with service. And I think coming down to recognize that it's about the people and what challenges they're actually looking to solve. And
Mhm.
if you can solve their problem more efficiently and effectively than other people,
Yeah,
you're going to get paid to do it, right?
that's a
And
fact.
I love that service first mentality, because if you give, you gain. And it's when you're thinking only about gain that you don't give. And that's a challenge. I think a good portion of turning passion to profits is recognizing it's about the people, it's about service, and it's about recognizing, is this challenge that I'm looking to solve valuable enough to this person that they're going to pay for it, that they're going to not just pay for it, they're going to be elated because you gave them so much value. So in the last moments that we have together today, Vaughn, what would be a call to action or something that someone could do today to look at their business and say, you know what, I'm going to take this passion, this project that I'm so passionate about, a way that I can go and serve someone and turn it to profits. Any final ideas?
Yeah, one thing I think of different people I listen to. Another guy I listen to, Donald Miller, right? The story brand guy. Yeah, he's got a lot of. I was watching some of his just content the other day, and he says a lot of companies lack the awareness of looking at when they want to launch a new product, right? A lot of them will. It's kind of a whimsical idea, and then they'll put all this time, effort, and money into a product. And he says a lot of times it'll fail, and so what he suggests, he said, and he shares a process of, and I don't know his exact process, but generally on his team, they literally feel something out. This is the product or service I want to offer, and then they have a process of elaborating on that. Who's it going to help? What's the market for it, right? And then whoever writes that has to submit it to their team. There's a review process, and he's funny. He'll say a lot of the things that I propose. He says, yeah, they get shot down within the review process, but he says that saves the company because number one, once there's greater wisdom in a group of people than an individual is kind of the point here. So if there's a process for a business to determine a new product you want to launch, have a process of multiple people looking at that. And if it doesn't get through the litmus test of a group of people, then it's probably a good thing because then it saves you not only time and money, but it's very possible people don't want it, right?
Yeah.
We want to provide things that people actually want.
Mm.
And so yeah, my recommendation, which I'm actually doing right now, because I have a lot of kind of products in mind of things I want to launch is establish a process for what that looks like in your company, rather than just, oh, I got this idea on a web, because I've done that many times, and a lot of times it doesn't work.
Mm.
So
I love
go.
that. And establishing those processes, I mean, you're going to go through lots of failures, but every iteration of that failure, you're like, oh, I learned this. I can improve the process. And
Yeah.
if we get married to the process and we just date the results, we're gonna have a great experience in business. But if we're always married to the results and we're like, oh, this was bad or this was good, then we have this emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
And I think part of what you shared there was so valuable is we really focus on the process. And
Yeah.
it's a process of becoming, because I heard this first from Jim Rohn, but says we rarely our income rarely exceeds our personal development. Rarely. So keep reading good books, keep listening to great audios. If you're interested in language learning, go read the books that have the stories that will be engaging for you. That's why you guys create so many different books and different stories, because maybe this resonates really well with one student, but it doesn't for another.
Yeah.
The more types of stories, the more types of characters, the easier it is for them to connect with the language and to have fun and play within it. So any final thoughts before I we turn this off? Any other ideas that you wanted to share?
Gosh, just oh, I love the idea of dreaming big, right? It's all of, gosh, what is that dream, right? And and what am I doing to achieve that dream on a daily basis? In the end, a dream is just something you desire, something you want to do to help people, and then it has to be broken down into some daily action items, right? If I'm just dreaming and not taking action, it's really Hey, John Maxwell says, he says, you have to have so many reasons to why that dream is important to you, why that, the why, start with the why that why matters for you to persevere and chase a dream. So yeah, that's a thought of his I love. So I ask myself, I'll ask myself on those hard days, right? What is the dream and what are the reasons I have today to persevere through the challenge and the failure? And I have to find those reasons, have to dig. Sometimes it's digging within the soul, finding that why, reigniting that passion and pushing yourself forward. It's always going towards something bigger and better that's going to help more people and serve. So I love that idea of chasing that dream and getting a lot of reasons why so you can persevere through that dream, whatever that means for various people, right?
Love it. Thank you so much, Vaughn. It was great sharing some heartbeats today, sharing some ideas. I really appreciate you. Love the TPRS method. What you guys have done, it's phenomenal. It's groundbreaking. I hope that you guys, if you're serious about language learning, that you take this serious. You're like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more. So how do people find you online and continue to interact with you?
Yeah, right now if anybody wants to learn Spanish, I'm your guy, right? We have our next Spanish class is coming up next month. It's a 30-hour class. Anybody can preview the first 6 classes for free because we believe if people will experience this a little bit, then they want to do it. Yeah, our website. I'll put in. Do I put in the chat or
No,
not?
you can put it in the chat. I'll also put it in the show
Yeah.
notes if you just send me that. It's not a problem.
Our website is tprsbooks.com. And there's on the drop-down menu, it says Spanish classes. So we have a class this summer. We have a class starting in the fall. And yeah, our classes come with an intermediate fluency guarantee. I said that 80% of our students are literally testing at intermediate Spanish after 60 hours. So our 60-hour courses come with that guarantee. And look, there's a percentage that don't reach, they need some more time. So the guarantee simply means if you don't test intermediate after the first class, the next class is free. Some people do need to take the class twice to get to the intermediate level. About 20% of our clients need more than the 60 hours.
But guys, just to put that in perspective, 60 hours versus 400 plus. It's like
Yeah.
no brainer. So
Yeah.
anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for all you do, man. I
Thanks,
love
Greg.
hanging out with you and being able to inspire more people to step into different languages. So I really appreciate you.
You
God
too.
bless, guys. If you have more of a desire to continue to level up your life, level up your business, continue to follow, hit that notification bell, hit the like, and I really appreciate you guys. God bless. Thanks, guys, for being on today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brigham.
Hey, you're welcome. See you, bud.
Bye-bye.
God bless.